Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Small Business Social Show. Today, we're going to be talking to Jeremy Epp of Jeremy Epp Solutions, and he's going to be telling you about how and why he left corporate America, even though he had seen quite a bit of success creating his own business, and started his own company, Jeremy Epp Solutions, in order to teach others how to be successful doing the same thing. And for those of you who don't know me, I am the owner of Fox Social Media, and my company has been helping businesses, practices, and brands to both market and grow online for about 10 years now. And I'm super excited to have both my podcast and my YouTube show so that I can help all of you as well. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe. And let's meet Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Small Business Social Show.
Thank you, Jill. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super glad to have you. You have an interesting background, and I love what you're doing right now. So to get started, can you please tell the audience a little bit about your background, your education, and any interesting tidbits they might find surprising?
I don't know if you have enough time, Jill, but I've got a I'll call it an eclectic background. Bottom line is started, working my way through college and started with insurance billing at a medical clinic, did construction work for a while, took a job with a startup company doing advertisement for new home construction. And that's where I first saw and was introduced to a mindset of being self-employed. And I was only with that group for 6 weeks because really they overhired for what their needs were. But in that 6 weeks, I saw how they thought differently, how they acted differently. And I'm sitting at this meeting and there were 3 owners and myself. I was the 4th hire to this startup company. And I was thinking, this is going to be great. I'm going to get on the ground floor. I'm going to be excited to learn. And it was very clear, again, like I said, they overhired. But I saw that if they didn't produce, they didn't eat. Their mindset was different. They had a higher risk tolerance, but they had to make smart choices. And in that time frame, I always go back to that because I think that's really what sparked my entrepreneurial drive that I've carried forward for decades since that time. I went on to work at a trade show company that was based with a medical device sales, and eventually found myself starting my own trade show business. And did that for about a year before I realized that business was going to require me to be on the road literally 3 weeks out of the month. And so I had a young family starting at that time. So I decided to look for other opportunities local. So I got into real estate and continued to work in real estate for about 19 years, which included a journey of incorporating in and starting my own mortgage business and building a team up. And so we had a real estate mortgage, and then we brought in an investment arm, an insurance arm into that business under one roof. And then the collapse of the housing market hit us hard in '08, and we had to shut the business down. And anyway, left there, found a temporary role at a law firm in Seattle, Washington, where I was in charge of starting up a new business unit within the law firm. So that was interesting, to say the least. There was parts of it I loved. There was parts of it I hated.
Yeah.
And so by this time, I was just exhausted. And so I needed to get someplace where I could stabilize my income and kind of catch my breath and get refocused. And so I entered the corporate world, worked for the Boeing company, started doing project management there. And I kind of got to that point where, I'm stable. I've grown within the company. What's next, right? And so started on the journey that I'm on today, which is why you and I ran into each other. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, you have an incredibly interesting and diverse background, and I think you're someone that has so much to offer others who want to become entrepreneurs, because you've seen the positive, the negative. You've been in so many industries, and you know what works and what doesn't. So I think it sounds like you've got a lot to offer.
Yeah, and I've certainly learned by both the watching and hands-on practice, as well as hands-on failure. And so failure can be a great teacher as long as you apply what you learn, so you don't repeat the same mistake more than once. So
yeah, and everybody fails to some degree, and it's just a constant that's going on every day, and it's disguised as learning. So that's it, learning what works and what doesn't. So now, can you tell us a little bit about Jeremy Epp Solutions, what it is, and why you decided to start that?
Sure. So as I was sitting in my corporate desk and I'm frustrated and I'm looking for what's next, I went back and kind of started to work through a process as far as defining what was enticing to me, what I was passionate about, what would help others, what would not limit me in certain areas that I had ran into limitations in the past. And so really what I came across was my desire to help others, to teach. And I love business. I love all aspects of business, both from a startup all the way to a big business corporation. And so the challenges and the problems and how they interweave and connect. And sometimes you don't always see the dots, but when you turn one dial over here, it'll turn this dial over there. And so you've got to know what you're doing. And there's always these contradictions fighting against each other. And so you've got to find the right balance. And so where I came in with JeremyEpp.com is I saw people in the corporate world just trapped. And they were, I tell a story where people are walking around the office and literally I'm hearing hallway conversations of frustration and depression, frankly. And I'm hearing conversations of, I've only got 8 more years till I retire. Yeah. I don't know if I can make it. I can just hang in there. I hope they don't close down my division. I don't know what to do. And all these negative thoughts of people just holding on. And I'm like, where's the passion? Yeah. And where's the drive and the interest? And so it really kind of made my heart go, boy, these people that are smart, educated, but they're trapped. They went to school for a specialty. They've been in their career field for 20, sometimes longer years. And now they're in a place where they feel like their options are limited. When in today's technology, in today's connected world, the options couldn't be greater. So really wanted to showcase and focus my efforts to helping a mid-career individual who had lived the corporate dream and was ready for the next step to have the courage and the know-how to step out of that realm safely and make the steps to a profitable startup company. Because as you know, going from a corporate environment where frankly the pay is typically fairly good, the benefits are really good, it's hard to replace that. And so it's most people can't afford to just quit cold turkey and move from one to another. They've got to do it in steps and phases. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes being very purposeful, and just really wanted to help people to show them the roadmap of what could be, and they don't have to settle to live in their nightmare for another 12 years before they retire. So that's the Jeremy Epp Solutions.
Yeah. And you know, you're making me think of another whole market as well. There are so many people that have been laid off. We have so many friends. And, you know, I think my husband and I are a little older than you are, but in our age group, you know, in the 50s, people have been laid off and can't get jobs. These are people who have skills, who have success, who have great references, and they cannot get another job.
Yeah.
So I think that's a whole nother market that you can really help as well. And it's funny you bring up having a job you hate. I had really only one job I absolutely hated. And the reason I worked for a government contractor in DC when I was really young, I'd come out of the airline industry, which is super exciting. And I love my job, and went to a government contractor, and super nice people. But the reason I hated it was because I sat at a desk and stared at a wall. I literally did nothing. And it drove me crazy. I couldn't stand to do nothing.
Yeah.
I can't do this. So I took a pay cut and went somewhere else.
Yeah. It does feel like a trap for most people. And so, you know, you mentioned layoffs, and I've gone through 3 voluntary layoffs. And when I was in construction, it was seasonal, so it was always coming and going. So, but I always felt like, I guess with the entrepreneurial mindset, I always felt like I was in control. I always was thinking of my plan B and my backup. And so I didn't feel stuck and helpless like a lot of folks do. But what we're seeing today that a lot of people don't talk about because it's not PC, which is there's an acronym floating around called popo, which is passed over and pissed off. And what's happening is we're seeing as the boomers are holding on to their jobs longer, typically due to financial reasons. Of course, with the collapse that we had about 8 years ago, there's some people hanging on to rebuild that. And the next generation of millennials are coming in. A lot of the middle generation, the Xer generation that was in line working their way up, are being passed over for a younger generation of worker who has more time to stay with the company, which sounds great in theory, but the reality is if you talk to these younger workers, most of them will say, I want to work here for 4 to 5 years, build my resume, and move on. And so their mindset is not the traditional 20, 30-year career at a single location. And so there's going to be a major tribal knowledge lost as corporations realize that it has changed completely. And so this middle generation of corporate workers who have done their time, they have the leadership experience, I'll say life experience, they are frustrated and they feel stuck. And so they're looking for options and they don't know where to turn. And so, one way is to just kind of accept it and just kind of be the expert in a specific niche, and hope that that niche is relevant for a long time versus being bypassed by technology as it improves. And so it's interesting dynamics now in the corporate world.
It really is. And what I think people forget is that you cannot replace life experience. And I know one of the things I always caution people about, and now social media, I own Fox Social Media, so I have had my agency for years, but one of the things I've always cautioned people about is hiring the intern right out of college and letting them not be overseen, because they just don't have the life experience, and you cannot replace that. And I'm sorry, no matter what you do, I know I didn't then, and none of us did.
I remember one time I was in my mid-20s, and it was my first corporate job. I was working in trade shows, and I was in a great sales and marketing team. And I remember my aggressiveness. I wanted to kind of show myself and prove that I was worth the next step up in my career as a young person. And I remember my manager coming to me and saying, "You haven't paid your dues yet."
Yeah.
And I remember getting so angry. I was so angry with her. I'm like, "Paid my dues? What are you talking about? I've been working for 5 years here." I had no clue what I was talking about or what she meant by that. And now as I look back, I chuckle and I'm like, yep, I find myself saying that to other folks, at least in my mind. So yeah, it's like you said, there's no replacement for life experience.
And there's not. And I remember being in my 20s and being, if someone said that's not going to work or you shouldn't do that, if they didn't tell me why, my brain didn't typically go there because it didn't have the experience. Now it goes there before you tell me why.
Right.
I'll tell you why.
Agreed, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's something that's very important. And younger people have a bazillion great skills and they have a lot to offer. But I think there needs to be that older person with life experience and experience as the manager or the leader in companies, whether it be in the social media role or anything else. I think now with social media, at least, people understand it's crucial. And so they've got whole departments dedicated to it now with a series of people who probably really range, in experience levels. So it works out. But I think we've kind of already talked about this, but your desire, we've already kind of touched on what made you leave corporate America and start your own business. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to ask you. But I guess, is there anything else you want to talk about in that? About that topic, or did we kind of cover all of that already?
I think one of the things I do want to touch base on is, as you look across, I once had a discussion, again, many years ago with a sales manager, and we had the discussion of how you could best control your income and kind of your future in that regard. And it was his belief that sales was the greatest job out there because you had no cap on your earning potential. And I thought about that, and I'm like, what about the business owner? And so I'm like, you've got the salesperson, but you have the business owner, which, by the way, can influence positively or negatively the commission rate at which the salesperson gets paid. And so I think it really comes down to whose business do you want to build? Whose legacy do you want to build? And there's nothing wrong with corporate America. Again, great things. we're coming, there's a lot of products that we use every day for that, of course. But as far as being in control of your own future and having not just a risk tolerance, but also the reward, and being able to see what it's going to take to get from point A to point B and see the fruits of your labor versus having to get authorization and go through committees and getting stuck in bureaucracy and just watching ideas kind of melt away into where they're almost useless because of just the processes that are out there that we have to all navigate in the corporate world. And so,
yeah, and that's such a good point. And I know because of the situations I've seen around me with so many talented, experienced friends being laid off, I think now more than ever, at least in my age group, it's crucial to control your own destiny.
right.
I don't think you can rely. And even if you are working a job that you love in corporate America, I think it's nice to have something on the side that is a fallback, a passion, something. The other thing I see is people that can't retire. They don't need a huge full-time income, but they can't retire on what they have in the bank. So they need that little side income there.
Right.
So I think that's, and a side story, my dad's 83. He has a podcast. He has a YouTube show. He has a business on the side. So he's an entrepreneur as well.
No, that's great.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Well, I think, we've all lived through changes and companies are acquired. Great organizations are downsized for one reason or another. Bottom line is you always got to have a plan B, as I like to call it. And it's an insurance policy that says, if something should happen, what would I do? Would I sit here and huddle and hope to pray that my name doesn't get on the negative list that's going to be the first one to get tossed? Do I have control over that? Not really. I might think I do, but the reality is if my boss is also on that list, guess what? I'm out. And so good things happen. Or bad things happen to good people all the time. And so bottom line, having that plan B, that mitigation, that side hustle is just a little extra assurance that you don't have to start from scratch if you find yourself in that position.
I totally agree with you. Plus, it's so much more fun. I've had my own business for probably about 10 years, and I work from home, and I love it. I won't go back and work for someone else. And what's interesting is I was offered a job, and it would take 11 hours of my day with commuting. And it was probably about 2/3 of what I make working from home. Like,
Not even tempting. Yeah.
I'll stick where I am. Thank you. I mean, even if you look at, yes, I don't have to pay self-employment tax. Yes, they have benefits. But even though I'm paying for those things, it was still beneficial to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is you have something on your website that I really, really love, and it is your 4-part definition of success. I 100% agree with it, and I want you to explain it to everyone.
Well, when I sat down and started to think about it, okay, I got to start over. My real estate mortgage business, we had to close the doors on that. And I had the good that I wanted to capture out of that, and I wanted to avoid the bad. And there were certain things that came out, and plus with life experience. So I created a giant list, and I'll get to your answer here in just a moment. But I created a list of what are my requirements? What do I want to see? If I had the ability to write my own destiny and be the creator of what this new venture was going to be, what are my requirements? So first off, it's got to be something I'm passionate about. I mean, what's the point if I don't enjoy doing it day in and day out? When it gets hard and tough and difficult, I still want to find that passion and that inner joy that's coming from doing it. Number 2, I wanted to help others by adding value and having a positive impact in their lives. Number 3, which was really important to me because this goes to one of my personal goals, I didn't want to be tied to a physical location. And so I wanted to have flexibility in my working hours. And that also kind of goes to some of my other, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Number 4, it had to be scalable. So I didn't want to trade time for dollars. I wanted to produce a product, produce a service that could be consumed multiple times over, and I could build and resell and help more and more people that way. Coming from the real estate world, I could only work with one buyer at a time.
Right.
I could leverage sellers a little bit, but for the level of service I like to offer, it was very challenging. And so it limited my income potential and made higher demands on my time. So that was really important to me. I wanted to have a limitless supply of content. So there was always new things to add value to help others. And then for the time being, I've selected, I don't want to have a physical product. I don't want to deal with manufacturing, shipping, returns, broken parts, complaints, warranty issues. It just was too much complication. I didn't want to deal with it. So out of that, I developed my core goals. My first one was keep it simple. So I have a tendency to want to overcomplicate things, and so I really wanted to tone it down, keep it simple. Number two, which was move forward. Don't let perfectionism get in the way. Start now, and we can make adjustments later as we see fit. I wanted to create my income replacement, or my replacement income source. Of course, coming from the corporate world, I didn't have the leisure to stop cold turkey and then move on, so I understand that very well. And then I wanted to be in a place where I could delegate and automate my business activities whenever possible, and really keeping my time as the centerpiece of the business, making it the most valuable and protecting it. And so whenever possible, I try to use technology. I try to use other systems that exist today to kind of help leverage that. And then really I wanted to build a branding platform to add additional products and services at a later date. So that all comes down to your question. So on my website, for me, I define success in 4 areas. One is creating a working environment that I am passionate about. As you can probably hear from my voice, I love the business. I love helping people get unstuck, see new things, develop new systems. 2, I wanted to work in an environment that allows me to help other people and really, again, have that positive impact on their lives. Number 3, not tied to a physical location. So I want to be able to travel whenever I desire. And as long as I have an internet connection and I have strong systems that allow me to work smartly, that is key to me. And then number 4 kind of ties all this in and provides a livable income source. So again, I'm not here for charity. I do have a family. I have obligations. So I do need to make money to not only create and cover my basic needs, but also my future as well. So
you really thought this out well. Very, very smart goals. And my definition of success is exactly the same as yours, because my bucket list item number 1 is a beach house someday.
yeah.
So I could go back and forth. And I live in Orange County, California, so it's obviously not going to be here. You could win the lottery several times and not afford a beach house here.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to be somewhere else that I have to travel to. So
yeah, my goal is to go on 6-month travel excursions at a time and not skip a beat on helping people. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How fun. One of the other things I want to talk about today is, what are some of the common challenges? What are the most common problems or issues that your clients come to you for, and how do you help them overcome those things?
I think there's a couple areas, but one of the initial ones I see, in addition to replacing that income source, because I think for a lot of folks, that's a showstopper right there, and they don't allow themselves to think creatively. But when we talk about a business idea or something that they're passionate about, their mind kind of just fogs over and they can't think of what they would want to do. Now, some folks, I think, naturally will tend toward leaning toward more of a consulting style of business in their area of expertise. And maybe they need some help on how to set up a business, market, sell, and kind of run the back end of that business. But they're still limited. They got to be very cautious, because that's just trading time for dollars. And so unless they're going to build a practice with multiple consultants, if it's just going to be them as a solopreneur, which is still not bad if you want to control your own destiny, but you are essentially just creating a job for yourself, and you're adding a bunch more work that you don't have to do in the corporate world, as you know, having to do all the back end kind of work to keep your business operating. So what I like to do is really walk people through a series of steps and exercises to help them identify areas that would be a great fit, both from a passion standpoint, perhaps from a problem-solving standpoint and an interest level, as well as a skill set, education, level where they can kind of tie in what they're good at, what they already know, even create lists of things that they have no interest in doing so they can steer clear of that.
That's a good idea.
So it's really important that you create your not to-do list as well as your to-do list and help them define that so that they can move forward. And then the next step is really helping them to lay out a plan just to get started. So I think many people that I've come across, they allow fear to creep in, that art of perfectionism to creep in, and they are afraid to just start taking steps. And the reality is, there's a book called Failing Forward. And so bottom line is, you're going to stumble, just embrace it and go, and just go. And you're going to fall, you got to get up and keep going and going and going. And one day you're going to look behind you and see how far you've come. And you're going to be amazed and say, wow, I never would have got here if I hadn't started, because I was waiting for the perfect plan. So.
Yeah, and you're so right. So many people do wait for that perfect moment and situation. The other thing I wanted you to tell everyone about is the Jeremy Epp Show.
My new baby. So I was looking at ways to get my name out there, introduce some concepts, and really start to help people. And so being a podcast listener myself, podcasting was kind of a natural place for me to go. So I started the Jeremy Epp Show, which is a podcast. We do weekly episodes, and began that middle of this year. And so kind of really focused on inspiring corporate people that want to take a leap of faith and make that change and be smart about it, as well as bringing on experts that can help talk about. I've got some great folks coming up here soon that are going to talk about legal options, franchising options, and other things for people to consider as they look at their options moving forward within starting their own business.
Oh, that's great. I've listened to a couple of your most recent episodes, and one of the things I really liked was that you explain things in a simple format and you give people actionable steps. So you feel like when you're listening, you're spending your time super wisely and learning things that you can really use. So I thought you did a good job with all that.
Thank you.
Okay, one of the questions I want to ask you also is there any advice that you can give people who want to start their own business, online specifically, so that you're not trading time for money?
Yeah, that's great. As you know, and I know, there is a plethora of information out there online. And I would just say choose 2, maybe 3 mentors and ignore everything else. You can get lost in the noise. It gets overwhelming. You're going to have a sense of, I need to do this instead of that. And you're going to feel torn in all these directions. And in the end, you're just going to throw your hands in the air and say, this is too much. I'll just stick with where I'm at now. So I would say really find that 2 to 3 mentors that are kind of in the space where you want to go, but also be cautious of finding mentors that are so far ahead that you get discouraged because you're going to feel like, I'm never going to hit their level. And just realize they typically have been doing this for many, many years themselves. They've gone through the journey. But while it's great to see their success, which I get inspired by, because to me, they've given us the roadmap of how to get there. And we don't have to figure it out on our own. We just follow the roadmap. Now, times change, technology changes, but it will get you a place to get started. And then find a mentor that's maybe a little bit further along than you are, that you can follow closely and watch and learn from them. So it will get you started in the right direction. But keep your eyes on both, close work as well as the horizon line. And that's what I would advise is get started. Don't get overwhelmed. Just down select into that 2 or 3 person niche, and it'll really get you going positive.
That's such good advice. And I know one thing I always add to that is don't listen to anyone who hasn't been successful doing what you want to do as well. So
Right.
If they haven't done it, ignore, because like you said, there's a ton of noise out there. So choose wisely who you listen to. That's great advice. And I want you to also tell everybody where they can find you and learn more from you.
So the best place is jeremyepp.com. That's the best site. I've got the podcast episodes. You can look at transcripts as well as other information and resources. And so we've got more stuff coming out. I'm going to be launching some e-courses here in the next couple of months. So really excited about that. So check us out.
Is that still kind of under wraps, or is that anything you want to elaborate on a little bit?
So the first, great question. The first e-course I'm going to really be focused on is how to physically set up your business so you are legally able to get yourself out there, market, and bring money in, and have both a tax advantage as well as a tax and legal protection from putting yourself out there as a new business owner.
So smart. And that's one of the things people do not know a lot about. Right. And having done that yourself, I think you're going to be a great resource for that. So I guess I just want to say thank you so much. I think you really provide the audience with a lot of great information today. And thank you so much for being on the Small Business Social Show.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jill.
Thank you so much for joining both Jeremy and I today. And I want to make sure that you remember to subscribe, because every week I'll be bringing you more information that's going to help you both build and market and grow as well your small business, your practice, or your personal brand. Thank you again for being here today, and I look forward to catching up with you again next week.